Welcome to Civic Engagement with Raymond Tyler. My name is Raymond Tyler for AtlanticCityFocus.com. If it's important to you, it's important to us. Here today on Civic Engagement, I have a special guest. His name is Mr. Stephen Young. Since the 1980s, he has been an activist here in Atlantic City and Southern New Jersey. He is also the man behind the Peacekeepers here in Atlantic City, and he is also the local representative for Mr. Al Sharpton's National Action Network. We're here to talk about voting in the upcoming election. We're also here to talk about the situation that's going on in Stanley Holmes, and we're also going to talk about activism. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
Thank you, and peace and blessings to your listening audience. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. How'd you get started in activism here in Atlantic City, and why would you say it's important?
Well, activism and advocating on behalf of those who can't speak for themselves is something that I didn't know. It just became my purpose.
Right.
But I started in the 80s, right there on Virginia Avenue.
Okay.
A building that's, the landlord didn't take care of it for maintenance or anything like that. So we started taking care of it ourselves. And we also established a tenant organization. And we had to fight the system and the powers that be because they wanted to tear it down and wanted us to move out. So we basically organized and got an attorney and everything, and we fought in the system and said that the building's structurally sound, so why should you tear it down? So we had to share that with the city. Our first black mayor, Mayor Usher, was very helpful with us getting the building rehab.
Okay.
Along with us going to jail because we blocked off the street, and they said it was going to block anybody up. My bail was $200,000 cash bail. Okay. But there's no violence, no weapons, no nothing, so it was downgraded. But it's the first time I went to jail as well, through the activism. I did like 30 days in the county because I refused to pay the fine. and basically the building got fixed up and rehabbed, and we got back in it, and it's still standing today. And, those are some of the things that started the activism back in 1986.
Okay. It's 2024 right now, and I usually start our interviews with this because up until now, we've always had elected officials on. So you're the first person to come on Civic Engagement who is not an elected official. Being that you're not an elected official right now, what is your job as an activist?
Well, every elected official is supposed to be a public servant. That's the oath they took, to serve the public. That's what I'm doing without the title, without being elected.
Okay.
So, and that's how you can find out who to vote for. You always say, how do you hold them accountable? What do you look for? How do you look for a candidate? Look for the person that's doing the work before they got the title. Okay. Who's serving your community now? And that's how you can find out who to vote for and why. And then, the reason why I'm not running for office no more, not even going to attempt to do it, is because I learned that in our community, there wasn't too many people holding them accountable. So who's going to kick them when they ain't doing right? Who's going to stand up to them and tell them the truth of how they feel and what's going on in the community? And without having, monies, because economics is attached to politicians.
Right.
Because in order to get elected, they got to raise funds. So they have to have a treasurer. They have to give out campaign signs. They have to have, fundraisers.
Yes.
Different things like that.
Yes.
So all that's connected with monies.
Yes.
So most of the politicians are basically sold out because the person that controlling the money controls them. So they don't necessarily be controlled by the community, because the community are mostly poor and living in poverty, so they don't have that money. But the big businesses do. So that's who they're loyal to the most, the businesses and not the people. And they put profit before people. And that's a problem that we have in here. And that's why we got to educate our people. That's why it's a pleasure to be here with you, to educate our community on on these type of things. Because a lot of people don't know, because they think that that person is just there and they supposed to just be there to just vote. No, after the vote, they're supposed to carry the vote through. Who does that but the people? The whole thing is elections and
Yes.
voting is supposed to be in the power of the people,
Okay.
not in the power of the elected official.
Okay.
So we are the majority.
Yes.
And some people say, well, I'm not going to vote, it don't make no difference. Yes, it does make a difference. But if you
Say it
don't
one
know,
more time.
yes, it does make a difference. But if you don't know, lack of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of what a vote does and how a vote started. So you got to look at the root. What was the foundation of a vote? See, people died, and this country was built on a vote. But it was built on a war to get the vote. People had to die. So that blood and sweat from Dr. Martin Luther King and others, risking their life on the line to get a vote, to change the system and change the mindset of elected officials that were supposed to be representing them, that's why people march. That's why people vote.
If you think about it, the right to vote goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War.
Correct. Yes.
Because before that, we were ruled by a king.
That's right. That's right. And I'll tell you, our vote, especially black people, is so important, because that's why they try to suppress our vote.
Okay.
If our vote wasn't important, they wouldn't be changing the rules and saying you got to do this and that to vote. It wasn't too long ago.
Right.
In the 60s, we didn't have the right to vote. Why was that? When we fought the wars, we fed the children, we slaved. But they said you can't vote because you're black. They didn't do that to no other nationality in the country. Why do we have to be treated like that? And that's something that other nationalities must realize. We paved the way for them to have the right to vote when they came here. See, we didn't come here as immigrants. We came here as slaves and slave ships.
Right.
And we helped motivate and create this land that we're in now. We made it what it is through challenging what was not working. What was not working was them doing Jim Crow. You can't go to the bathroom over there. You can't eat in that restaurant. You got to stay on you got to sit on the back of the bus. Who changed that but us? But why was it there in the first place for us? Colored only, white only. These are the type of things the voting done. And people stood up. And the ones who forced the votes the most, we got to give credit to Dr. Martin Luther King and the church.
Okay.
At that time, the church was powerful. And you say, well, what changed the attitude in elections and in vote? Again, follow the money. When churches and faith-based organizations, not only the church, to mosque, the temples, when you start touching the money, you can't speak out against the person that feeds you. So if you're not speaking out on the truth, who becomes your God? That money or your faith? And we have to challenge that now today and wake our faith-based leaders back up and say, listen, that money ain't work all these years.
Okay, all right.
But the faith in your God keeps you going.
Okay. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Civic, I'm so used to doing radio. You're watching Civic Engagement with Raymond Tyler. My guest today is activist Stephen Young. Let's talk a little bit more about voting. So I want you to make it clear, like you haven't already, but I want to make your case clear, because a lot of people think it's either activism or voting. How do you marry the two?
That's a good question, and it's a very good answer for that, is that they go hand in hand. Because in order to carry out the action of your vote, most of the time you got to do some activism.
Okay.
Very seldom you will see somebody vote without the activism. And very seldom you'll see the activism without the vote.
Okay.
So it goes hand in hand together. But we got to educate our people, and starting with our young people.
Okay.
because they don't know the three branches of government.
Okay.
You got the executive branch,
Yes.
you got the judicial branch,
Yes.
and then you got the legislative branch.
Right.
And it's supposed to be checks and balances.
Yes.
That means the president of the United States
Yes.
carries out the executive branch,
Right.
right?
Right.
But who makes the law is the legislators.
Yes.
So the legislators don't be carrying out the law.
Right.
See, we got to understand that.
Right.
And then when it's time to all of that to be challenged, right? When it don't mix and go together, that's when you end up in court. That's the justice part.
Okay.
See, and we're not learning these things.
And you getting excited talking about it.
Yeah, I learn as I go. That's why I say I like when you interview, you bring out the best of me. So,
Okay.
so that's what that is. But yes, it's very passionate. You haven't one without the other since, like you said, the Civil War and how it was started.
Yeah. So how do we, you work with young people, how do we, A, educate younger people, and then how do we engage people who feel disengaged or disconnected from the system? I want to choose my words right because the purpose of civic engagement is to ask the questions, not to insert my own belief systems.
Well, one thing we're doing is that I'm the president of National Action Network, South Jersey chapter.
Yes.
Also, I'm a peacekeeper.
Yes.
We train CPR, first aid, and proper way of handling people. So we boots on the ground.
Okay.
As well as I'm a credible messenger.
Yes.
Credible messenger. I have credibility in the hood. You
Yes.
know what I mean? So I can relate to the children, the youth, and the elders.
Okay.
And what happens is we got to have that type of marriage in our communities.
Yes.
And it's a disconnect right now with our young and our old.
Okay.
And what happened is everybody's afraid to go out there in the street. But Jesus, Muhammad, and Moses, where were they? Where's your faith in the street? Yeah, we know there are killings out there. How's you going to stop when you don't go out there? You can't stop it in a boardroom. You can't in the mayor's office. You can't stop it. No, it's out there.
Okay.
And that's how laws are changed. So everybody thinks it's changed in the boardroom. No, it's changed in the street. When those young people, and when people are hungry, and
Yes.
people are homeless and different things like that, if there's no disconnect and they feel like they're not included, then you have an uprising.
So I want to make sure that I'm reading you or listening or understanding straight, and that our viewers understand what you're saying too. It's almost, are you saying that before we can concentrate on getting you to the polls, we have to make sure that you have a job, that you're healthy, that you have a decent place to live, that your children are educated, that you feel safe?
All of that is public service.
But are you saying that that when you've checked the boxes on those things, now you can concentrate on getting them to the polls, or do you have to try and get them to the polls as you are addressing these needs? And I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just want to make sure.
Well, one thing is that this is like our young people and the people that don't want to vote, and the people that have been voting and don't see a change. It's because of that issue right there. Because what happened, if you don't see the connection of what you have in common with your vote, then you end up not voting.
Say that one more time, please.
If you don't see what you have in common of your vote, then you end up not voting.
Okay.
So in other words, you have to be able to relate with your community on what you want them to vote on. It has to be something that affects them.
Okay.
And the people that's affected the most should be the elected officials. Because what happened is, and it's the opposite way around. How can you make a law and be a legislator for your community and you've never been homeless? You never went without a job? You don't know what they're going through. So how can you represent them? So the best people to come up with the solutions to the problems are the ones that went through it and going through it. And we got to get to that.
If you're just tuning in, this is Civic Engagement with Raymond Tyler, and he is Stephen young, and we're talking about voting right now. We have a presidential election coming up. We have a couple of state seats that are going to be available here in New Jersey. And so I guess, well, tell us, does the National Action Network locally, nationally, or the Peacekeepers, or both, have a plan to actually get people registered? And I don't know if you endorse candidates, but...
No, we don't endorse candidates, but we hold them accountable.
Okay.
And we're through the National Action Network mostly, because we have a convention coming up, and it's free in New York.
Okay.
And you can go to www.nationalactionnetwork.net, and you can register for free.
Okay.
And it's a 3-day convention up in New York, in Manhattan, and anybody's welcome to come.
Will Atlantic City be sending delegates this year?
All the time,
Okay.
all the time. And we also will be bringing our youth up there as well.
Okay.
Because we want them to experience being around presidents, candidates. All these candidates that you see running for office,
Yeah.
all of them will be at our convention.
Okay.
President Barack Obama has been there. President Biden has been there. We've had several presidents, even Kamala Harris has been there. We've had it from congressmen, senators,
Right.
everybody come.
Right.
And not only that, entertainers and Magic Johnson, Stevie Wonder, and they have workshops.
Right.
So you can interact with them free.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And this is something. When other time you're going to see them really?
Okay.
Other than being on the TV.
Right.
But you can actually see them live coming to our convention.
Okay.
And then that's the difference in that.
Yeah. If people want to get involved, make you guys have to get a bigger bus, how can they get in contact with you or the local chapter of the National Action Network?
We have a number, 888-400-1236. That's 888-400-1236. You can leave your name, number, email address, and we'll get back in touch with you in reference to that. But we got a bus going to D.C. coming up on the 28th for breaking news.
Okay.
On the 28th of this month, the Stanley Holmes Village residents, because of the no heat and hot water for over 2 years, the living conditions that they're living in. And this is the entire housing report. It's not only Stanley Holmes Village. But Stanley Holmes Village has been the one that they've been really moving around and so forth. And we have been organizing as National Action Network and advocating their behalf so they can actually have a tenant resident organization. So we organizing them and telling them what their rights is when they're dealing with HUD, housing authorities, cities, inspections, and so forth. And it's not only housing projects. We got to understand there's a lot of seniors in these housing authorities.
Yes.
And when I say we got senior high rises, we got people that are disabled, we got children and families, you got scattered sites, and people that get Section 8, which is a voucher. You can go anywhere and rent a house according to your income.
Right.
So we have all those things, but the maintenance of it and the management of it has been the worst. And we had a HUD official.
Okay, so excuse me for stopping you. I apologize. Let's assume that our viewers are not familiar with what's going on in Stanley Holmes. Can you explain what the problem is and what your process has been to this point, and then continue on? I'm sorry.
First, we'll start with the problem, and then we'll talk about the solution.
Okay.
The problem has been, for the last 3 to 4 years, there was a design of some people, leadership, wanted to tear down housing projects. This happens all over the country. They'll tear them down, they're the worst. First thing they try to say is it's crime in the community. So it's so crime-ridden, so many killings and everything, you want to tear it down. Well, in Stanley Holmes, it's not a crime issue anymore.
Okay.
Because when they start tearing down housing projects, what happened is the crime spread it. There's in every section of the community. People are homeowners, everything. So what happened is, when they talked about this plan, they didn't include the residents. So there was no transparency with this Atlantic City Housing Authority Board. So by that happening, they continue to not take care of the maintenance of it, so that it can go down. Because if you've got 15 to 20 years and no stove and no refrigerator, no, different things, cosmetics, the regular maintenance of pipes and different things like that, after a while, it's going to deteriorate. If you don't put oil in your car to drive, it's going to break down. Same thing when it comes to a house or an apartment. And HUD gives top dollar, and everybody should be involved with this because we're talking about federal money. Everybody pays federal taxes.
Right.
So everybody has an input in any HUD properties. So this is about 430 units, okay? And they want to try to tear it down, but they wanted the maintenance to go down so they can just move. Because after a while, you're like, look, I can't live here no more, no heat, no hot water. I'm leaving. So what happened, they didn't take care of it, the maintenance went down, then the management stopped giving supplies out to the workers so they can make repairs. So then after a while, they were saying, look, you gotta go, we're gonna give you Section 8 vouchers, just leave. And what we said, well, there's no place to go. There's people on the waiting list to go in those places, because they're affordable, going by your income. So what we decided to do as National Action Network is advocate on their behalf. So by that I mean some of the residents came to us and said, look, we need somebody to help us. Nobody's saying anything. So we contacted the elected officials. That's from the federal government.
Right.
And that includes your congressman and your 2 senators.
Okay.
Congressman right now is Congressman Van Drew. Our senator right now is Cory Booker and Menendez.
Okay.
Right? Now, they have a certain amount of responsibility for dealing with HUD when it comes to the administration, because the politicians control the money to approve the budget, so they can give them the money, so they can give it to these agencies to carry out what the people want. That has not happened with HUD. So all the way, the president and his staff, and that's the HUD secretary, she has not been answering to the letters, to the concerns of the people, to the concerns of our elected officials. And the thing about it, she's a black woman. So we're saying, we're going to take it to our level, we're going to organize the residents, but we're going to Washington, D.C. on a bus. We want to put a face to our elected officials and our administrators out there, and to Secretary Fudge, and say, listen, these are human rights violations. The mice, the roaches, no heat and hot water. Children not washing up to go to school because there's no water. People freezing at night, balled up on the couch in the living room, trying to stay warm. It is so bad, some people that have dogs, the dogs are suffering. And then they told them to leave their dogs and their pets in a cold place with no heat and hot water and go to a hotel while they take care of a sewage problem that they knew it existed months ago. So HUD came here and they did an inspection and they talked to the residents, and when they did the inspection, all that sewage waste was there, and they seen it. And then 3 months later, they didn't do nothing about it. So it's the neglect of the entire system. So what better way to change it is to power the people. But you have to be educated on that. And that's what we did. Educate, get on the bus, and we go there, we know what we're talking about, and we put a face on the name of a person. And we're holding the federal government accountable how they spend our dollars as taxpayers.
This is Civic Engagement with Raymond Tyler. He is Stephen Young from the National Action Network and the Peacekeepers. So the next thing is that you are going to DC, along with putting a face on the problems. Do you have any other goals or things you want to see come from this trip to DC?
Absolutely, and that's what we was talking about, solutions. The people has the solutions.
Okay.
The experience I had with housing,
Right.
I was a former commissioner of the Housing Authority as well.
Okay.
So I know how to engage in Washington to
Okay.
bring $35 million here. So
Okay.
people can have home ownership.
Okay.
So the residents was inclusive. So
Okay.
they chose their houses, how they wanted them built, where did they want to live in the city.
Okay.
And that actually happened. So if
Okay.
it happened then, it can happen now.
Okay.
And so when we talk to HUD, we're letting them know it's about inclusion. You gotta listen to the residents that's suffering. No, everybody was trying to hide that.
Okay.
And that's why a lot of politicians didn't speak up about it.
Okay.
And, there is, we always talk about partisan elections and different things like that. But when you're dealing with a humanitarian issue,
Right.
everybody should be speaking up about it.
Okay.
And that has not been the case.
Yes or no, should Stanley Holmes be torn down?
Well, just like we did with 31 North Virginia Avenue, just like we did with Soldiers Home. These was old buildings, right?
Right.
And people wanted to tear them down. But I say to this, what we did, we got an engineer to do a structured survey
Right.
and found out it's structurally sound.
Stanley Holmes.
Some parts of Stanley Holmes is structurally sound. We got to remember,
Okay.
these buildings withstood Hurricane Gloria, Hurricane Sandy, all types of storms, weather, they still standing. A lot of other places ain't there, they're not there no more. Even some of the new places.
Okay, so,
So the
I'll
structure-
press you a little bit. So that's not a yes or no answer.
Well, you have to do a study.
Okay.
That's what I'm
All
saying.
right.
You got to do a feasibility and marketing, and not only see if it's structurally sound. That's the model and everything else.
Right.
But then, is it feasible? Feasible means basically you find out can you really do it? Can you rehab it? Can you do it? Gut it out, rehab it, and then it's about cost.
Right.
You know what I mean? So all of that should play a role. Is it cheaper to move them out,
Right.
or keep them in, or to fix it out?
I'm from the government. I got $1 trillion worth of money that I can give away. How much money, and you have your wish, how much money are you taking, and what would your wish be? Like, if in a perfect world, what would happen? Would they be rehabbed? Would they be torn down and the residents have the ability to be a part of the planning process to rebuild more public housing or affordable homes?
Very easy answer to that is this. It's about doing the study, the feasibility study.
Okay.
After you come up with
I'm not going to get away from that study.
Yeah, right. You gotta
Gotta
do
do
your
the study,
homework.
okay.
So what happened is, and it's an easy thing to do.
Right.
So then you have the residents involved. See, some housing authority, the residents is managing the property.
Right.
Who best know how to take care of the property? Just like we did at 31 North Virginia, we manage the property.
Okay.
So we're gonna take care of where we live at. We're gonna make sure it's security. We're gonna make sure it's clean, so forth. Same thing with the housing authorities. If the residence is inclusive, and it's a mandate from HUD, you're using HUD monies, which is federal monies, the resident's supposed to come first. It's called Section 3, when it comes from employment, contracts, and owning the business.
Right.
We don't see that here.
Okay.
So what we will do, we'll create that and strengthen that. So now, we'll own it, we'll do a training program to rehab it with the residents that live there, more like Habitat for Humanity. We'll find other land in the community and do intergovernmental land swaps and different things, so we can build up those houses the way we want. And now we got the plan. And you know what happens with that? Now people can get out of the debt they're in. Now people become homeowners. Now we got close to 80% renters in Atlantic City, only
Right.
20% homeowners.
Right.
We can increase that because the renters become homeowners. Now the taxes can go down because you can stabilize your community because they're paying taxes, because they're homeowners and they'll stay here. Because we have generations of people that's been living in public housing. Can you imagine 20 years, 30 years, living in a unit, public housing? Even if you're paying $100 a month, add it up.
Okay,
You own it.
okay.
So those are the types of things that we're talking about. So solutions, basically.
And I think because we haven't been moving around, the lights here went out, so I'm gonna get up and we'll be back with more civic engagement after this.